In this lesson, we'll take a look at how we can lay out UVs for things like tubes and pipes. So when we're working with models like this, where we've got a simple shape, but it is kind of a complex configuration, we can run into kind of some issues when we create the UVs for that. So let's take a look at what that looks like. So if we go to UV editing, and I'm going to decrease the tiling here on our image. And then we've got this kind of pipe that's all curvy, and we want to create UVs for this. So one of the ways we could do it would be just to do like a smart UV project. And you can see that it does create UVs that we'd be able to use to paint textures, but you can see that the UV kind of reflects the shape of this pipe. And if we think about it, it's sort of a cylindrical shape that is just moving around in different directions. And the texture that we paint would much more easily be painted on something that's a little bit straighter versus something that's all curved like that with all the seams. So we can do a few things to kind of straighten things out. One thing that I want to do first is I'm going to define a seam. And so let's just click on one of these edges going along the length here. I'm just going to do to edge loop and make that a seam. So that's where we're going to have that seam located. Now let's select all of our faces. Let's go to unwrap and let's do follow active quads. And you can see that there are a few different ways of calculating this, but you get a much better starting point. At least it's a little bit straighter, although in this case we do have kind of an angle on the end. But you can see how that will change based on what you select. So length average, and you can go in and look, and you can see that that's sort of at an angle, which is not necessarily what we want. Let's go ahead and set that to even. And I'm going to get rid of this image so that we can see things a little bit better. Okay. Now I also want to kind of put this inside of the 0 to 1 space, so let's pack it in. Let's scale it down a little bit and move it over. And now I want to straighten this out even more. Right now you can see that these lines are sort of at an angle. So let's come up and select, we'll deselect everything. And then let's come in and select these points on the top. And we're going to go to UVs, and let's go to Align. And let's go Align in the Y. So it makes a nice straight line all the way across. Let's also now pin those UVs. So that means whenever we do something to this UV, those points won't move. Now this one is really off, and so let's go ahead and grab those. And we'll do the same sort of alignment. So we'll go to UVs, weld align. Let's align in the U. And hit G, and I'm just going to move them down a little bit. Right down there. Now let's pin those. So now with both of those pinned, let's just hit A to grab everything, and let's just do a quick unwrap. So now that gives us a little bit better. You can see that you can align those on the sides if you want as well, but it gives us a much cleaner, straighter layout that we can use on our model. So if we were to go in and create a grid here that this can follow along with, and then maybe we can go back and increase the tiling again so it's a little bit maybe easier to see. Your texture will now follow along nicely with the UVs that you've got. So there are ways of making UVs for this kind of a piece a little bit easier. You can always go in and do it the other way and have it curved like that, but a lot of times the textures that you create will lend themselves better to a UV layout that's a little bit more straight like that. So the next thing that we'll talk about is kind of editing our UV. So up to this point we've done just kind of some projections, but how do we start to cut things apart and move things around and connect them back together? So let's do that next.